couple of weeks ago, we took a look at what TikTok had to say about trauma, and considering how well my last TikTok React went, I thought I'd give this one another go. What is up, everyone? My name is Omar Farouk. You are watching Traumadelic Therapy. I am a trauma-informed therapist, and today we're going to be looking at what TikTok has to say about mental health as an overall.
I am nobody's master, got it? I don't want you here, and I don't want you here. I'm stuck with you.
So, okay, this is really funny. So this kind of reminds me of a theoretical framework within the field of mental health known as internal family systems or parts of self-work. And so I'm by no means an expert on this, but essentially like this theoretical view helps you to look at all of the parts of self as one big family and look at them as ways that your body has been trying to protect you. So when you look at your anxiety self, your anxiety part, when I start to feel stressed out or when I feel really uncomfortable, my anxiety presents in my legs. And parts of self would imply that this part of me is taking over the steering wheel when I go into an anxiety spiral or whatever you want to call it as a way to protect myself from a perceived danger. From a trauma-informed perspective, I look at things at the central nervous system level and I start to understand what is the function of your depressive part or your anxious part when your nervous system is under distress. Oftentimes, treatments within parts of self-work looks kind of like integration, where we're allowing the client to build compassion for their parts and understand that they're there to protect them instead of turning on your anxious part. Like everyday people, not much different from this meme. They'll look at their anxious parts or their depressive parts or their neurodivergent tendencies, and we look at them as great big burdens. But the problem is when we fail to look at them as protectors and we look at them as something to be ashamed of, that feeds into this greater feeling of shame, and the greater feelings of shame in a nasty spiral increases symptoms of depression, anxiety, all the adverse symptoms of ADHD, and we get more frustrated with ourselves, and the family does not work together when we look at internal family systems. I like to tell my clients, you want to look at your parts as if they're your own kids. And how would you treat your own kids if their anxiety was showing up?
It's Brittany, bitch. And I am back.
You know, we get annoyed at people when they disappear for long periods of time, especially when they don't really communicate, or people get annoyed with us when we disappear for long periods of time. I think from a trauma-informed perspective, I see this as another form of shame just kind of taking over. Like when things kind of go really sour when it comes to our symptoms of depression, when it comes to our symptoms of anxiety, they could be really big and overwhelming to process when we have big to-do lists to do. Work is becoming overwhelming, and honestly, engaging with people might just feel like sensory overload, and so we just kind of shut down. This could be known as dissociative or a freeze response. You go into your dorsal vagal state, which is something that I explained in my The Last of Us Part 2 video, so check that out if you haven't already. We have to understand that some people are going to be upset at us if we're not communicating, that we're struggling to keep in touch, and some people are going to be okay with that. If you're on the opposite end, we also have to understand people have their own routines, and we're seeing this to be more of a common thing as distractions kind of get ever more distracting as technology becomes even more overstimulating and overwhelming. Oh no. Yes. And then we come to therapy when this no longer works. I saw this amazing quote from an online creator on Instagram. I don't know their name, unfortunately, but they were basically saying, let's go with the depression, for example. Your depression isn't the problem. It's the fact that you think it's a problem that's making it worse. And we look at mental health symptoms, whether they be unpreferred emotions, being upset, being angry. We put them in a negative context and we put that into one big negative box, and that creates feelings of shame that prevent us from feeling those very important feelings. Your body doesn't know the difference between feeling angry, sad, happy, euphoric, or whatever. These are all emotions that are functional to the body. So when you tell the body, hey, let's not feel any of these emotions, let's put a band-aid on them and just kind of forget they exist, your body starts to learn, oh, you don't want to feel emotions, let me go ahead and numb out the good emotions too. And this is when people start to become emotionally numb. This is very common for people with a lot of complex trauma as well. And with the moment we kind of put a band-aid on it, it usually comes back and it gets worse. Yeah, this seems to be a very unfortunate and common experience for those struggling with a lot of complex trauma. especially when you're growing up with a narcissistic parent. This type of parenting teaches kids that what they're excited about, what they feel fulfilled about, what gives them life isn't something to be trusted. And so when kids grow up in an environment like that, they grow up to not put their own needs first, not put their own excitements first. They grow up to second guess their own intuition. They tend to not trust themselves. This is a very heartbreaking reality. I wish parents, as well as everyone in our society, had better education on mental health.
I mean, come on. I know you. You know you. And I know you know that I know you. I mean, come on. I know you.
That's funny. Yeah, sometimes with our clients, we have to have a talk. This isn't to induce any feelings of shame. This isn't to like call them out in a negative way. For new therapists, I wouldn't recommend doing this in the first few like weeks, maybe even the first month or two, because you're still building rapport in that stage, and sometimes rapport takes longer from one individual to another. You don't want to challenge too harshly with someone who doesn't have any reason or right to trust you yet. But anyways, after a while, like this is common when you and your client know each other very well.
Emotional health, bad. Physical health, bad. Hey, are you feeling okay?
Oh, I'm fine.
This kind of goes back to that putting the Band-Aid on everything that isn't okay. People who usually say that they're doing fine when they're not doing fine might suggest that they grew up in an environment where they might have not either been valued when they weren't feeling well mentally, and or when they did share something about them not feeling well, they got hurt, harassed, whatever. And to top it all off, we live in a society in which we don't really make room for complex emotions. So then we grow up with this inability to be honest with other people about, hey, this is how we're really doing, because somewhere in our subconscious, we might be worried about what they'll think of us. We don't feel safe. And maybe we'll be probably like lying to ourselves. Oftentimes I'll see clients who are at certain times of their lives incapable of admitting that they're not doing well.
Stop. I can't take any more. I can't do this. I cannot do this any fucking more. I can't do it anymore.
So there's two reasons why this is so relatable for so many people, including myself for sure before I became a therapist. I mean, one, the reality is our current economic structure isn't really fit for what us as humans evolved with, especially when we talk about neurodivergencies. Everyone has a different set of skills and different set of talents. To assume that everyone is fit to do a 40-hour work week while assuming that everyone should be early morning risers and that nobody should be a night owl, and to on top of that not accept any adverse reactions that come out of our emotional system, our nervous system. This is a very common freaking breakdown. It takes a lot of moving around and facilitating of your environment externally and doing a lot of work internally to even start to function well in a full-time standard capitalist 9-to-5 type of job. The other reason is if you work, for example, in an environment where you have to engage with a lot of customers who are violent or rude, or maybe a boss who is abusive or whatever, your nervous system is learning in that environment that, hey, this person isn't a physically or emotionally safe person. So I might release more cortisol and adrenaline in my system so I know how to defend myself in case shit hits the fan. If you're working at this one place, you're probably coming back consistently throughout the week. So now your nervous system and your brain have learned to associate this place that you're going to with needing to put itself into survival mode. So when you go and you pull up into the parking lot of your job, you're already feeling that stress. You're kind of feeling avoidant, or maybe you're feeling fidgety, you're feeling angry because your body's gearing up for something that's building up over time, and you've probably haven't had a chance to release that stress and reset your nervous system before going back into it. And then this person might have a bunch of symptoms like restlessness, worry. They might be looking like they shut down. And instead of looking at them as a human being who is struggling to regulate their nervous system, because we don't teach that in this country, we look at them like, oh, you're depressed, you need therapy. Oh, you're anxious, you need medication. By the way, I'm not shitting on therapy. I'm a therapist myself. I just think that we don't really make room for people to be human. We just slap a diagnosis on it and get them sent on their way.
Does it ever happen to you where you feel so burnt out that all you do is lie in bed in your free time, but then you feel hella guilty for not doing anything productive, and then it just sends you into a spiral of feeling shitty about yourself, even though you already felt shitty about yourself? Or is that just me?
Yeah, so this is kind of like what I was referring to earlier as your dorsal vagal state or a freeze response. There's so many different ways to look at it, maybe even dissociation. Essentially, I'm assuming this person is describing what we've kind of dubbed as the internet as analysis paralysis. The task at hand is so overbearing, is so overwhelming, it increases anxiety, and if you're someone whose fight or flight response is a freeze response with an increase in dysregulation of the nervous system, you're going to tend to freeze because of the increased anxiety. Because you kind of freeze and lie in bed, your motivation is, as a byproduct, depleted. That increases more anxiety. It becomes a never-ending spiral. So the problem is, down here in our bodies, we feel like complete garbage. You might even actually feel literal tingling from your cortisol, all that energy ramping up, and your brain has to interpret that. So your brain is going to conjure thoughts that are congruent with how you're feeling. We try to fight it by ruminating. We try to fight it by trying to find an answer in our head when the problem isn't really up here. It's about what we're feeling down here.
Well, that's it for me, guys. Thanks very much. Good night.
I find that running out of your social battery is most common when we're masking all day, when we don't feel safe enough to express ourselves as we truly are. This is very common within the neurodivergent community as well. Okay, let's talk about this, okay? Because I think crisis is a very stigmatized topic within the mental health community. So it is no doubt that if you come to me as a client, or if you go to any other therapist, what we're supposed to be doing, if you were to tell your therapist, hey, I have plans of unaliving myself and I have the intention to do it, I have all the tools ready to go and I'm going to do it tonight, it is our job to make sure we report that to get you to safety as mandatory reporters. However, if you come to me as a client and you say, hey, like I have thoughts about unaliving myself, I'm not gonna do it, but I'm just thinking about it. I don't think therapists need to jump on every thought like that and call an ambulance. We have to start to understand that passive ideation is a very normal part of human experience when shit, it just hits the fan. I think we can learn to be a little bit more empathetic about those who go through these types of thoughts and just kind of be there and sit with them and help them not feel a sense of shame or a sense of like wrongness for having thoughts that come up like that. Oftentimes, we're not even in control of the thoughts that come up. You might think that you control what you think, but how many times throughout your day do thoughts just come up and steer you in a different direction? Again, I'm not saying to not get help for someone who's in the middle of a crisis, who's going to do something to harm themselves indefinitely. I'm just saying that as therapists, I think we need to do a better job at leaving room for conversations when clients just want to say like, hey, I just kind of feel like I don't want to be here right now. We can empathize and we can help them to learn to overall feel better by not shaming them and not putting them into a situation that might even make them feel worse at the end of it. All right, everyone, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think I got wrong in the comments down below or what I failed to mention in some of these videos. Click over here if you want to see a video of me reacting to trauma Tik Toks. I really appreciate the support and the community that this channel has been building in the past few weeks. I hope to see y'all in the next video. Talk to y'all soon. Take care. Peace.
I think I'm just too afraid to get started. I try to do it, but I know this time I got this. I really hope I'm not late to the party. I try to fit in every time I get exhausted. I trim my beard, slick my hair, now I'm running